Hello, generations young, old, and everyone in between. Welcome to Generation Apollo. And today, we're going to be seeing the first debut episode in a new series that I call Generation Apollo Reacts, where basically I give my commentary on websites, articles, videos, tweets, posts, etc. Anything that happens to pique my interest, especially if it happens to deal with topics relating to intergenerational conflict. So this is going to be a little less scripted than my normal, usual content, but I thought it would be a good idea to, try something new and try to branch out. So I decided to do something like this. So, if you guys happen to see any articles or anything that you think I might be interested in covering, by all means, please send it my way. So, we're going to go ahead today and cover a article I found one day on Reddit, basically titling how Underpaying Millennials has now caught up with boomers and has now come back to bite them in the rear end. So on MarketWatch.com, we're going to be reading this article titled, Buy Boomer, the Coming Call of Workers Over 50. Employers seize on slumps to purge more expensive, more experienced workers, study warns. So let's go ahead and get into this. Those of us who remember when 80s music was new had better start bracing ourselves for those big box store greeter jobs earlier than we expected. It doesn't take a genius to see that the jobs market is probably heading for a massive rolling shakeout, and that means plenty of employers may be using the cover of COVID-19 to get rid of lots of expensive older workers. Age discrimination in the jobs market, which is supposedly illegal, goes up in recessions. Some employers take the opportunity to axe experienced workers who are paid a reasonable wage and replace them with cheap, desperate kids who will put up with anything. This isn't just my opinion. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what the commenter on Reddit was saying, that all these years of employers basically, underpaying younger workers, looking for every way they could to undercut them, to undercut their pay, to exploit them, has now come back to haunt the older workers who, at the time, thought, what do I care what's going on with the younger workers? I don't care about the plight of them. I have my experience. I've got my senior position, so I'm safe. Well, now apparently they're starting to find, a lot of older workers are starting to find out the hard way that wasn't entirely true. But we'll get more into that. Let's continue reading here first. New research from the National Bureau of Economics Research finds that, yes, age discrimination rises hand in hand with the unemployment rate. Older workers tend to be the last hired back and the first fired. And while the unemployment rate has been dropping back down for the last 2 months after the initial COVID shock, you're a fool if you think it's over. Okay, that was the 70s. Economists Gordon Dahl of the University of California, San Diego, and Matthew Kepper of the University of Georgia ran the numbers on age discrimination complaints filed with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and compared them with the unemployment rates in the relevant industry and U.S. state at the time. For each 1 percentage point increase in a state industry's monthly unemployment rate, the volume of age discrimination firing and hiring charges increased by 4.8% and 3.4% respectively, they found. And that was even more true when they eliminated weaker or possibly frivolous complaints and looked only at those that the EEOC deemed had merit and deserved further investigation. Even though the incentive to file weaker claims is stronger when unemployment is high, the fraction of meritorious claims also increased significantly when labor market conditions deteriorate, they write. Just for good measure, they also ran analyses of a study conducted in 2012, which sent out fake female resumes across the country in response to job openings. And what was their findings? Well, each 1 percentage point increase in the local unemployment rate reduces the callback rate for older women by 1.7 percentage points, off a baseline 10.8% callback rate. Relative to younger women, they conclude, that's about a 16% relative decline in callback rates for each percentage point added to the unemployment rate. In other words, the younger applicants were allegedly 35 to 42, while the older ones were over 50, they say. And the bottom line? The higher the unemployment rate, the likelier employees are to favor younger women applicants over older female applicants. All else equal, though, an older female is 6.8 percentage points less likely to receive a callback when she is competing against 2 additional younger female applicants, which translates to a 63% reduction relative to the mean. So they conclude, taken all together, our two analyses provide compelling evidence that age discrimination rises as labor markets deteriorate. As far as we know, this is the first direct evidence for age discrimination varying with the business cycle, both for the firing and hiring margins. Oh, great. Well, I mean, that's what I was saying. You know, the laws that they have on the books right now to prevent age discrimination, they really only offer a limited, very narrow range of protections because, if an employer says, we have to cut, so many employees to save on costs, if that happens to affect mostly older workers, how do you prove that they did that based solely on age and not just on, market shares or on budgetary needs? So, there's still plenty of open room to discriminate against older workers, even with the laws on the books. So, all right, but let's go back to the article and finish that up real quick before I give my commentary. Technically, employers aren't allowed to discriminate against workers over 40 on the basis of age, thanks to the 1967 Age Discrimination in Employment Act. But it's honored more in the breach than in the observance. In 2005, the Supreme Court ruled that its protections were pretty narrow, as I just said. Many employers' decisions that are intended to cut costs or respond to market forces will likely have a disproportionate effect on older workers, and that is legal, wrote Justice Sandra Day O'Connor for the majority. The stock market and some of the economic data may be pointing upward, but the bond market is telling a different tale and forecasting something in the region of catastrophe. The 10-year Treasury yield is back down to March panic levels. Gold is booming. Tensions are rising between China and the U.S. Also, it slowly seems to be dawning on the world that the virus didn't go away just because we all hid for a couple months. Cases have surged from here in the U.S. to China. Restarting the world was always going to lead to the viruses coming back again, as the scientists in Imperial College London warned way back in March. This is causing some reopening plans to be put on pause or even into reverse. Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker is reimposing a 14-day quarantine on anyone entering the state. Good times. Let's hope this all is over. That when all this is over, there are actually some stores left hiring greeters. Oh boy, yeah, that's right. I wouldn't count on that. I mean, you're going to be competing against teenagers and immigrants for those jobs, and that's before they eventually automate them with robotic kiosks. But anyway, so getting to my commentary, as was pointed out in the Reddit thread, it seems that underpaying millennials for all these years has finally caught up to the older boomer workers in a way that they weren't expecting. Employers are now using the COVID chaos as a cover excuse to, quote-unquote, trim the fat, so to speak, and unload expensive older workers and replace them with desperate younger ones who will work for less. Some of you older folks might remember when the millennials first entered the job market and complained about the shitty pay and how they were being exploited and mistreated. And some of you just said, shut up and do your job, that's how it is. And some of you even said, what do I care if young people are being underpaid? I've got a good job and years of experience, so my job is safe. So screw the young people. And some of you even thought that if young people were being underpaid, then that meant more money for you. Well, now the boomers are finding out the hard way that when you make a deal with the devil, there's always a high price to be paid in the end. They're now discovering what my generation has already known for going on more than a decade now, and that being that corporate culture is cancer, because it slowly sucks the life out of you, and the minute you're no longer useful, you'll be spat out like a piece of used chewing gum. The older generations defended corporate culture because they initially benefited from it when they were on top. But now, that same soul-sucking corporate culture is now coming back to bite them in the ass. You might be thinking, but if companies cut their older workers, that's going to hurt productivity in the long run. And yes, you're right, it will. But you need to understand, corporations don't think in the long term. They think in terms of quarter to quarter. Their only loyalty really, is to profits. So they won't hesitate to cut your job if they think that'll save them a few dollars. They don't care about quality. If a younger worker can still produce at a minimum acceptable level of quality, then it's still worth it for companies to cut older workers, and they will do this for as long as they can get away with it. That's why it's pointless to get mad at the younger worker who took your job. That younger worker is not only doing your job, but also the job of one or two other workers who also got let go for the same reason, and all while getting paid barely half the salary you got to do twice the amount of work, and they'll take it because that's still a step up for them. I know that's probably little consolation to you, but that's what happens when we allow greedy corporate interests to cultivate an entire generation of underpaid workers. As long as there's a pool of cheap labor to draw from, companies will always choose that option hands down. And older workers, your years of experience won't save you, and don't think that discrimination laws will help you either. The law is easy to get around because cases of age discrimination are hard to prove anyway. If a company eliminates an entire department due to economic factors like a downturn or even an entire industry change, and that happens to disproportionately affect mostly older workers, the company can always say, "We were just responding to economic trends." Of course, they'll never say, "We wanted to get rid of Bob because he's 55 and we can get a 25-year-old to do his job for half the cost." As incompetent as corporations are, they're not that stupid. That's all the law does. It just keeps companies from being honest about why they're really giving you the boot. So, boomers and older generations, this is why you shouldn't turn a blind eye when your younger counterparts are being underpaid and exploited. By staying silent, you are condoning toxic corporate behavior, and you are unknowingly helping to create the crop of desperate workers who will eventually replace you. And for the millennials and Gen Z, I say this: learn from what's happening to your older counterparts. Understand that one day you'll be old too, and you'll also eventually face what the boomers are facing now. The best I can suggest to you is to make yourselves invaluable to your employers to the point where your boss needs you, but you don't need them. But if you're in a job where you're expendable no matter how hard you work, then you need to start thinking about changing into a career with better job security. How do you know if your job is at risk? Well, here's 3 simple questions that should help you. Number 1, can your job be easily automated or outsourced? Tech jobs are at especially high risk for being outsourced because many of them can be done remotely. So if your answer is yes, then you really need to start doing some career planning. Question number 2, can your job be done to a reasonable level of quality by someone less experienced than you? If your answer is yes, then it's very likely that you will eventually be replaced by a younger worker. However, if your answer is no, then proceed to question number 3. And finally, number 3. Does your job require a skill set that's hard to find, and does your job have zero margin for error? If yes, then experience and reputation will be your greatest assets. Your employer will have a limited pool of qualified workers to choose from, and hiring cheaper, inexperienced workers won't be an option. So if you're a brain surgeon or a nuclear technician, then it's pretty safe to say that your job will be secure even in older age. So hopefully these questions will give all of you, both young and old, a good outline to judge how secure your job is and how to plan ahead. Just remember though, older generations, young people are not your enemy, and corporate management is not your friend, because it won't hesitate to stab all of us in the back when it serves their bottom line. You are only as valuable as the lowest among you. Mistreatment of younger workers leads to mistreatment of every worker. We either all thrive together or we perish together. And with that, I'll conclude the video here. So, what do you all think? Do you want me to do more of these reaction videos? If so, send me any links you think I might be interested in on Twitter or leave a comment. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And lastly, I'd also like to announce that I am now on the library app, so don't forget to subscribe to me over there. The link will be in the description, along with the link to the article on MarketWatch for those of you who want to read it on your own time. So, thanks for watching Generation Apollo Reacts, and thank you for tuning in to Generation Apollo.